Good afternoon and welcome all of you who are on time. We will just wait another 2 minutes and at 3:03 we will get started. But we welcome you, like Kenyans like to say, mapema ndio best. So thank you for joining us and get ready to engage with us. We have a wonderful session ahead. Karibuni sana. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It is now 3:04. So we are going to get started. This is our quarterly webinar, and we are so excited to see some regular faces, but also some new faces. All of you are extremely welcome. My name is Wendy Gaya Waithaka, and I work with NACADA. We deal with issues of alcohol and drug use prevention. And one of those areas that we deal with is positive parenting. Are you able to see anything on your screens with guidance? You may have heard that today, you may have had the recording start. So if you would not like to be part of the recording, you can go ahead and switch off your video, though I can see most of you don't have your video on. Please type in the chat to let us know where you are joining us from. SM, some of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s associate SM with, I don't want to say the word, but please let us know what your name is, SM, by changing that. All right. I can see people are already typing in the chat to let us know where they are from. Karibuni sana. Please confirm if you can see anything other than me on the screen. There's a presentation that doesn't seem to be reflecting now, but it was reflecting earlier. So we're going to get started, and I will explain to you why NACADA seems to be doing something as random as positive parenting. And we have seen a lot of research has shown that when we talk about parenting, when we improve our parenting skills, it has a great effect in reducing children's vulnerability to drug use. That means when you practice positive parenting, your children are less likely to use alcohol and drugs. It also means they are less vulnerable to mental health disorders, and we hear a lot about this nowadays, whether we're talking about depression or anxiety disorders and such kind of mental health issues. The other thing that positive parenting has been linked to is positive outcomes when it comes to attainment in school. That means children of parents who practice positive parenting principles are more likely to succeed in school and also to succeed socially, which means, they adjust well, they're able to make friends, they're able to express assertiveness and also pro-social behavior. That means behaving in a way that is acceptable within our society. So that is part of the reason that motivates us to reach as many parents as we can in platforms all over the country and online. And so we thank you for being a part of this community. We all know when our children were born, those of us who are parents, but even as caregivers, when we get these children as aunties, uncles, and whichever other, it could even be a grandparent, no one gave you a manual for how to parent them or care for them in the best way possible. So these webinars help to kind of fill in that gap. And we know that it takes a village to parent. And so we hope that this is your adopted village, that together we're going to sharpen each other and change the trajectory of children and young people in our society. So let me quickly see where people are. We have those joining us from Nyahururu. Welcome, Andrew, Lucy in Lamu. We have Jillian from a safe house in Nairobi. Thank you. This is also a safe space to share. We have George Mukavana, who is from Kariobangi South in Nairobi, and he's excited to be part of the team today. We have Joanne from Nairobi, Asanteni. You're welcome to use the chat at any time. And Nyambura says, Kajiado, please. Kajiado is in the house. Tunawashukuru kwa kuwa hapa leo. All right. So no one has told me whether what you are seeing on your screens. Let's see. Sometimes technology can let you down. But let's see, John, who is this joining from Kiambu? Nyambura is confirming that you see me. Great that you see me, but I was hoping you would see much more than just me. So let me see if I can rectify that real quick. Because I would love for you to.
Wendy, we see the screen.
You see just the screen now?
Like two slides that you have shared, Mentimeter.
Okay. Okay.
One is why is positive parenting important, and the other one that says interact here, Mentimeter.
Great, thank you. And that she has even introduced herself. You've had her voice. I will proceed to introduce today's speaker, who is Dr. Carol Chakwa. Sometimes I see your name is also Caroline or Caroline. So Dr. Carol is joining us, and she has a long rap sheet. She's an author, she's a therapist, she's an educator, and she's a parent coach. And we are so honored to have her here. You can see when her video is not on, there's a logo there for Stawi. That is her baby. She is the founder and CEO of Stawi Camp for Well-Being. And she is passionate about helping busy parents connect with their children. And we know that in this 21st century, busy defines a lot of us and a lot of our days. I said she's an author. The book she has written is titled Parenting with Your Heart in Mind. Yeah. So it's a practical guide for intentional and conscious parenting. Yes, so that's something that we have been talking about in each of our sessions, that when we are parenting, it's important that we are intentional. It's important that we are conscious of the things that we are doing, and that our children learn from seeing us and they emulate what it is that they see. And in our title, in the presentation title for today, we talked about nurturing resilience, not just in our children, but first in us, for that very reason, that our children learn a lot of things from us about how to cope, about how to act, about what's acceptable and not acceptable. And this also relates to the use of alcohol and drugs. So when we use alcohol, we use drugs, our children are more likely to repeat the same. So she's also naturally a parent, and we are grateful for her to be able to connect with us today. So today we are trying something new. So please, if you're able to see the code on your screen, you can scan that QR code, or you can go to the website and enter that code, which will enable you to participate interactively in the next few minutes. Are you able to see it? Are you ready? Because we value your contributions. We don't like speaking into a machine. Even now, I can't even see your faces on video. So it's always great to hear from you, to read from you in the chat, and to see what you have to say. Learn from each and everyone's experience. So thank you for joining us on Esther is in Nairobi. We also have Gilbert at our center, Miritini, in Mombasa, and we have Faith in Rongai, in Nakuru. So I don't know if that's Rongai, Nakuru, Rongai, Nairobi. All right. Have we been able to log into Menti? If so, we can proceed. Thank you and welcome, Purity from Mombasa. I hope you've been able to do that. All right, so today we want to see, what word or phrase would you use to describe what you want most for your children? Yeah, in a previous webinar, we spoke about how do you start with the end in mind as a parent? You know, what do you want most for your children? Are you able to capture that in a phrase or a word? Great, I can see our first response. Someone wants a happy and fulfilled life for their child. Okay, someone is picking our word for today and saying they would like for their child to be resilient, caring, confident, competent. Oh, the 3 C's, huh? Someone would like for their child to have peace of mind, successful. Yeah, we all have different definitions of that. I hope you're able to break it down for you and in your mind as you think, what does successful mean? Okay, excellence and fulfillment. Fulfilled is coming up again. Any other words or phrases we would use? Okay, great. Someone who is not able to get on is typing in the chat. That's also perfectly okay. We have one boy. She said it directly to me, sorry. Stability. She would like for them to have stability. All right. Sharon from Eldoret and Bernard from Nakuru. I hope you've been able to type in the chat or in Mentimeter. You can scan the code to participate and you can see your responses are coming on the screen. Now there's a hidden response here because of this code. I can't see it. Lead a healthy lifestyle. That's number 7. All right. Thank you for sharing those. One more question. What comes to your mind when you hear the word resilience? Oh, Esther is asking, where is the code? If you go, there's directions right at the top of the screen here. If you go to menti.com, you use that code 6767, and then you're able to type in. Yeah, let me see if I can put it in the chat for you real quick. Yeah, it's there in the chat. Also, if you want to use the link directly, you're welcome to do that. So let's see, what are the words that come to your mind when you hear resilience? Yeah, what do you think we're going to be talking about today? Nurture your resilience. Oh, yeah. Overcomer. Yeah, resilience is about overcoming, triumphing. What other words do we have? Oh, I like that. Bounce back. Yeah, you throw it down like a ball. Unless it's a deflated ball, it should bounce back. Ability to move on. Someone is thinking about coping mechanisms, not giving up. Adaptability. Keep going. Flexible. Capacity to withstand. Tough. Able to handle situations. Reinventing. Capacity to withstand. Wow, all of these are awesome words, and there are more in the chat. I can see we're talking about being tough, having endurance, ability to withstand challenges and hard situations, adaptability, God-fearing. Great. I think at this point, you have quite a bit to kick us off with, Dr. Carol. So I'm going to ask you to dive right in and start sharing with us what you have for today, as we keep in mind all these contributions that we are getting from our participants. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Dr. Carol, it's all yours.
Hello. You can see me, you can hear me, right?
Right.
All right. Thank you so much, Wendy. Good evening, parents. I know this is being recorded, so it could be good morning when you'll be watching this, or afternoon. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I just want to invite all of us to be mindful and present as we continue with this conversation. I'm so excited that I am with the kindred spirits in terms of your opinions, or your perception, actually, your perception on resilience, because most people sometimes will think resilience is gritting your teeth through something and being able to jikakamua, the English word, the Kiswahili word of jikakamua, or just grit your teeth through something without showing emotions and all that. That's generally the view we have of resilience out there. But when I see the words that you're using, it's exciting me. Flexibility, adaptability, being able to be open-minded to learn. So that's really exciting. So karibuni, everyone. And again, thank you for inviting me here today, Wendy. I will talk a little bit about myself briefly as we continue, but right now I would just like to start with what I call a mindfulness exercise, where we can just ground ourselves. So stay grounded. Let me start sharing my presentation. You can see it. Wendy?
Yes, I see your presentation.
Okay, awesome. So karibuni sana. I hope you have your pen and notebook. I tend to give a lot of information, and the reason is I am a teacher by profession, and I also believe that the more information we have, the better for us. And then out of the information we have, you pick one or two things that you can run with it. Then the rest you can chew it as you go. Again, this will be recorded, and I believe it will be shared with you. But it also just helps to have a pen and notebook. There is something about being able to internalize what it is that you learn when you write it. Okay, for those of us who are old school, writing is still a very main source of learning. So again, I invite you to keep this interactive. Again, Wendy, thank you for setting the tone and making this interactive. And so let's keep going with this interactivity, and whatever is put, if I'm not able to see it and I ask a question, I believe, Wendy, you'll be able to read it out. The other thing I'll ask is just make sure that when you're writing in the chat, it is set to everyone, unless it's a private message. So if it's a private message, then you can either direct it to myself or Wendy. But if you would like the interaction to be seen by everyone, just make sure that in the chat it's set to everyone. So let's just take a moment to do one of the several mindfulness exercises that are out there. So take just a deep breath in and out as you settle where you are. I am aware some of us could be driving, some of us could still be in the office, but you can still be mindful for a few minutes or even a few seconds. And that is part of positive parenting, is a parent who is mindful, who is conscious, and who is connected to themselves. So whatever it is you're doing, you can continue doing it, but you can do it mindfully. Okay, so as you breathe in and out, whatever it is you're doing, just take note of 5 things you can see. Just take note. You can mention them under your breath or in your heart, 5 things that you can see around you. All right, I have several things around here, noted more than 5 already, including the screen, including my face, including my light here, a cup I have here. I don't know what it is you can see. I'd like you to take a deeper breath in and out, and just pay attention to your tummy or your chest actually rising and falling as you take your deep breath in, and then pay attention to 4 things that you can touch or feel. Could be your hands clasped against each other like mine. I can feel my earrings dangling on touching my neck. Maybe it's where your feet are grounded. That is something your feet are touching. So at least 4 things. As you take another deeper breath in and pay attention to your chest, see if you can identify 3 different sounds, 3 separate things you can hear. I hope you've been able to identify 3 things you can hear, 3 distinct sounds. And then now, as you take another deep breath in and out, are you able to isolate 2 different smells? Pay deep attention, you just might. And finally, one thing you can taste, you can roll your tongue around your mouth. All right, so you can bring your attention back to base. Thank you for indulging with this exercise. And therein, ladies and gentlemen, is your first tool for building resilience. Being mindful, being conscious, being aware of what is going on in your surrounding. When we calm ourselves down, we are able to calm down the nervous system in moments where we are agitated or our nervous system is revved up, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. And when that happens, we're able to calm down the nervous system. We're able to access the calm part of our brain. And the calm part of our brain, therein lies wisdom, therein lies kindness, therein lies empathy, which is very fundamental to, number one, to resilience, and number two, to positive parenting. So this is your tool number one. And one of the things you will notice is that the tools I'm going to give you are very much available to you, okay? So the tools for building resilience are not out there. They are not complicated. They are part of who we are as human beings. They are very God-given. So I want you to tell me in the chat, you can even unmute. I don't know if they're allowed to unmute to say, Wendy, but let's make this interactive and ask, is there any of this that looks familiar to you? Any of this? What is on the screen right now? Do you resonate with any of these statements? And if so, which one? So let's just see in the chat.
They are welcome to unmute.
Thank you. Yes, Nyambura says, will my child be okay without me? Thank you for that. Any other? I guess it's only Nyambura and I who have these issues. Huh? The rest are here for the other parents. You know, the other
Mine
parents.
might be even all the above. Though I do remember having a conversation with a friend about how some things I said might be ruining my children.
Ah, yes, and thank you for that, Wendy. And Elizabeth says, find myself right there. Joan says, all for me. Lillian, am I too hard on my child? Elizabeth, I find, okay, yes. And Wambui, all of them. Am I doing the right thing? Almost all the above from Esther. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Purity. Am I ruining my child? Pauline. Okay, they're coming in fast and furious. So if I skip yours, just pardon me. Pauline says, am I too hard on my child? Michael, am I doing enough? Yes, I'm too easy on my 3-year-old. All right. And I bet, Dorcas, that there are moments that you have said, I'm too hard on this child. We tend to oscillate. The same parent, the same child, you're like, I'm too easy on this child. And then you find yourself on the other side actually and say, no, I'm too hard on this child. So we tend to find ourselves actually oscillating around all that. Am I doing the right thing? Almost all the above. Am I doing right? Almost all, almost all, almost all. I don't know that there is any here that can say none of the above, okay? And I put that, am I raising a softie son there? Because we're talking about resilience, and sometimes we tend to remove, to deny our sons some of these experiences because we think they will soften them. Okay, don't be too huggy and cuddly, or men don't cry, on such messages, subliminal messages that we already learned from our parents and how we were brought up. So that is a very important one. So the reason I have put this here is to bring us all to ground. Okay, fine. Let me just ask again this one. This one I have to ask, does this resonate with you, this statement? Honey, when you grow up, okay, there is this Mentimeter thing that is right in the middle. I don't know how to remove it. Let's see. Okay, I think I know the contents of the presentation. Honey, when you grow up, I want you to be assertive, independent, and strong-willed. But while you are a kid, I want you to be passive, pliable, and obedient. Does this resonate with anyone? Do we sometimes find ourselves in this kind of perplexity? You celebrate your child when they are out there leading the pack, sometimes even, you know, running for positions of prefect or monitor, or writing a little petition to school to say this is not right. Or you tell them you go and speak up for yourself, you know, when a bully is someone is trying to bully you. But when they try those things in our spaces, it just lands different. Does this resonate? You can even just put a thumbs up. I want to see if I'm the only one who struggles with this, who gets excited when I hear about my son's leadership qualities out there, but when he comes to push back at home, I'm like, not in my house. Don't try that here. And again, very subconsciously. It's not that it's intentional. Anybody? All right. Okay. All right. I see some thumbs up. I see. All right. Okay. All right. So thank you again. The reason I'm doing this is just to bring us together to a place where we realize that we are not alone in our parenting perplexities. We are not alone in the spaces of conflict, in the spaces of doubting ourselves. And so breathing in and out is the second part of that mindfulness of tool number one. You can do that grounding exercise without learning to breathe in and out. And so this becomes also a very fundamental tool actually in parenting, just being able to realize that you are not alone in this journey of parenting. The perplexities that you are experiencing are not unique to you. And I don't say that to undermine or minimize or dismiss your experiences. I say that to give us a sense of community and get us to a place of, hey, I am not actually alone. So it's important that we do that, that we don't isolate ourselves in the perplexities that we are experiencing in parenting, and just remind ourselves that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. And so you and I, like Wendy said, this is a safe space. Focus on being a real parent. Engage, ask questions, comment on the aha moments of resistance. Say, no, don't, Dr. Caro, I don't think, no, I don't agree with that. We are all open to that. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Just be a real one. And another thing I would like to just bring us, to ground us together, to bring in a sense of community in unity, is the second one, is that if parenting had a GPS, you see that GPS that we use, the Google map, then you get lost and it start telling you rerouting or recalibrating. Parenting is pretty much like that, okay? And especially as your children grow older, it's a little bit, there's a little more structure when they are younger. They are open. They are, they think we own the world. Okay, they listen to us. But as they grow older and they start pushing back, we realize that, you know what, we need to step back. We need to recalibrate. And so I'm here to tell you that it is okay to recalibrate. It is okay to change your mind. If you've been too easy on your children, it is okay to begin to start putting structures. On the other hand, if you've been too hard on your children, it is okay to start being flexible, even as they are growing. It is okay. It is okay to sit your children down during this holiday and say, okay, fine. I know I've been letting you just do whatever it is you want on the screen, but here now, let's talk about changing these rules. Or, hey, I think I've been too hard on you. And so I'm going to be flexible a little bit. Remember, we are talking about resilience, and a lot of us talked about flexibility and adaptability. Resilience is what we really need in parenting as part of recalibrating. Okay. Yes, the slides can move. I will move them as we go along. And there you see. So just a little about my personal and professional journey is that I am a therapist and a teacher by profession. I have trained as a teacher and also as a counseling psychologist. I have worked with families for close to 20 years. And initially I started working with children. Okay, my initial clients were children. And more, the more I worked with the children, the more I realized that how easy children are to influence, how easy children are to just, create an environment. I can see I'm glitching. I don't know if it is me. Are you people able to see me okay? Okay, I think I'm okay now.
We can see you. However, on my screen,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only seeing that slide that had been put for what comes to your mind when you hear the word resilience. That's just the only slide that is on.
It seems like there are some people seeing that and others I'm seeing. Okay, let's see if I can fix that.
All right. And I don't know if you removed the Mentimeter option, because it's on me, it's on my screen as well, where it's telling me to join and I can't move it. Yes, now it's gone. Are we good? Agnes, are you the one who had an issue?
I'm good now.
You're good, eh? All right. All right. Okay, wonderful. So we can continue. So I was saying that, you know, I realized that children are it's so easy to influence children. They are open to experiences. They are open to learning in a way that adults may not be open to. And so it would be very easy to help them in the therapy room, but I would send them back to the same environment. That contributed to them coming to therapy. And so over time, I realized that the people that I really, really needed to reach and support with a lot of compassion and empathy. It's not about blaming parents and saying they are on the wrong or making mistakes. The reality is that we all come into parenting without any prior training, okay? And so what I have dedicated my life to over the last 8 years now is to just work with parents. I do have, you know, a team and people in my networks that I send children to, but I work specifically with parents because I realize the best way to help a child is to support children, to support their parent. And I support them with tools around positive parenting and conscious parenting. And I would really like us to change the way we see children because of our upbringing and some of the things that we have learned along the way, our own experiences. There's a way we see children. And I would like us to change that and also to be able to create the right environment for children to thrive. So my intention today, already it was sent out to you, it's in the flyer. So based on that, these are the things I want us to talk about today. Are children of nowadays fragile or not resilient? Then we're going to unpack resilience a little bit. Then we will ask ourselves, what do resilient children have in common? And then as part of all this is giving you a toolkit for resilience for you and for your children. So every conversation we are having, I ask that you open it up first, let it work through you before you think about how to support your children. The tools are the same, okay? But this content, allow it to pass through you, okay? Don't grab it and be like, this is what I'm gonna try on my child. Take a moment in a very mindful way to see how does that work? How does that work for me? And then we'll have a moment for Q&A. So again, a quick question. I promise you after this, I'll dig more into the content, but right now, just to get us really moving and really warmed up. Please answer this question. Are children more fragile and less resilient than we were at their age? Is it true? Is it false? Why or why not? Again, would love it if you unmuted and just shared. Would love it if you put it in the chat. So let's go. Very true for Gathoni. Yes, thanks, Dorcas. Can you tell us, please, why you think it's true that they are more fragile and less resilient? So many of us are saying true. Now, I'm that kind of teacher who wants you to elaborate on your answer. All right. Just don't shy from answering because I'm asking for a longer explanation. Can I have a bit of why? So far we have 100% true. Faith, please direct the answer to everyone. I see it came to me and your answer is true, very true. Agnes says true and not true. Oh my gosh. Okay, at least Lydia
I can explain my true and not true.
Please go ahead. Thank you. This is Agnes.
Yes, this is Agnes.
Uh-huh.
Resilience of children will sometimes be determined by the environment that they have been brought in. Mm-hmm. And even the hardships that they have experienced as they go along, or the challenges that they have been subjected to by their parents to develop resilience, and not a parents, even school. So really it depends on, and they will be resilient in some areas and may lack resilience in some other areas. So that's why I said true and not true. So depending on their nurturing and their exposure and the training. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. It depends. And let me just say right up here, in behavioral science, where psychologists are and people in mental health, we never have an answer of yes or no. We have the kind of answer that Agnes has given that says, it depends. And then we go into long explanations. So you're right on track, Agnes, in your explanation. Lydia says, yes, they lack coping mechanisms. Julian says, true. Mercy says, I think more of exposure, like I know my rights. So is that now resilience or not resilience? Aidan says, true, technology has a contribution to it. Absolutely. There's no right or wrong answer here. Wambui says, true, I tend to be more protective and don't allow my children to explore, especially if I see any risk. Okay, thank you. Yes, thanks for the explanations. I think the resilience shows up in different ways. True. Their experiences are different from ours. We tend to assume they are fragile, but it all depends on how we bring them up. Very true from Andrew. This is because our parents were authoritative and authoritarian, whereas parents of nowadays are more permissive and a bit neglectful. True, because of mostly working class parents with less time with the children and more guidance. Thank you, Edan. Harriet says, true, they are very protected from the real world, okay? And I mean, for me, I would ask, what's the real world, okay? You see also our idea of the real world is very different from their idea of the real world. In fact, we usually say that, you know, we don't prepare our children for our world. We prepare our children from the world that we don't even know exists, okay? Especially because of the way things change very fast. But I hear you. I hear what you're saying in terms of experience. Allow me to move forward because of time. Jackie, I see your hand. If you could put it in the chat, that would be great, so that I'm able to move and then we can continue. So what is different? Okay, let us think about then what is different. What is it that is different that could cause us to think they are resilient, that could cause us to think that they are more fragile and less resilient or more resilient? So again, my point here today is to give you information and then see where that falls in your space, okay? So the reality is that our children, we are raising them in a space of less community focus. Less community focus, we can agree that, okay? And why that is a problem is that we thrive in community. We are wired to thrive in relationships and in community. When they say it takes a village to raise a child, it really does take a village to cause us to be resilient, okay? And so, but because nature doesn't like a vacuum, what happens is, I hope you can identify with that image there. There are some people who may not identify with that image, but we used to make that and we used to call it helicopter and run and make it run and run with it and it will go round and round. So in its place, we have the global village. Why? Because community has to be there. Community is part of who we are, who we are wired to survive and to exist. So we do have now the global village. Whereas in our communities, for most of us who grew up there could be some of us who are Gen Z parents here, I don't know, and maybe the younger millennials. You may not have experienced this, but it's important for you to still understand the sense of community keeps changing even as we keep going. So in its place, we have the global village, whereas before this whole technology boom, I mean, internet boom and this global world where everything is available at the click of a button, We had teachers, yes, but mostly they used to speak the same language, okay? And by teachers, I just mean the adults in our space. So there are too many teachers, 150 million results at the click of a button. We also are raising our children, and that's, for me, that's where I really am keen about helping busy parents connect with their children better. The reality is that we are busy. And we can't all leave home, or we can't afford to have maybe a one income home, many of us. So we have to, if you are two, you have to be out there working. There are people who are in changing family structures because you're parenting alone, okay? And so that comes with guilt, work-family balance. We have fears. Some of us have already talked about how we tend to protect our children a lot more, okay? So they're not able to see the real world out there, okay? Why? Because the real world out there is really dangerous, and sometimes it's just best to protect them. So this is different, and we need to acknowledge that we are raising children in a different setting. And these things I have talked about here are the normal ones, the usual ones that we know, like these are kind of obvious, okay? But this next slide really talks about the uniqueness of raising children in a digital world, okay? We need to realize that this is the first generation to consume disasters live. We don't realize the impact that has on our mental health. When you consume, we are not wired to have information coming at us as it is happening. Bodies are being counted during COVID, you know, shootings, people are being shot, buildings are crumbling down, a school is on fire, all right, and X number of kids, you know, we've lost X number of kids, you know, there is an accident that has just happened. We are not wired to have that kind of information coming at us that fast and furious. But at least you and I, who are adults, the part of the brain that is supposed to help us process that kind of information is mature. Our children are experiencing the same kind of information coming up on them, and yet the part of the brain that is supposed to help them to process that is not mature at all. It actually develops at 25, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So what that means is that our children have a lot of negative news at our fingertips. We do too, but there's a way we can, because we are mature, we are old, and because physiologically, actually, we are wired to be able to process those things, okay? Then they tend to be more pessimistic. And I don't know if you have noticed that with your children, that they just, you know, when they are describing something, they'll tell you, this was the worst day ever. I hate maths. I hate all my friends. I do not have friends. I will never make it. You know, all those, they speak to themselves so negatively. And we need to understand that it's not just that they are negative or they don't have faith, and let's not shut them down when they talk like that. We need to ask ourselves, what is in my child's environment that is causing that level of pessimism? Now, with all that's going on, for us, if you look at this picture, we used to create our own helicopters and run barefoot from one end to another. We would walk 5 kilometers to school, some of us, or not. But the reality is the environment provided opportunities for us to let off steam naturally. And so is that why they seem less resilient and more fragile? That's a big reason, the environment. So we need to be able to step back, because most of the time when we say our children are less resilient and more fragile, we look at them from a place of they are entitled and they are spoiled. And I need us to release that. Like I said, at STAWI, actually what we do is we want to change the way we see children. We want to change the way we are raising children, especially by releasing our mindsets, okay? So the reality is that if we are able to bring back some of these things, these are really the factors for resilience. Environment, just nature, okay? It really does make a difference. It helps our children let off steam. And so with all this pressure coming at them, somehow with all the negativity, with all the disasters they're experiencing in life, the mandamanos and the abductions and all this, because our kids are aware of all these things that are going on, okay, in the different spaces. There's a lot of negativity in our space, and somehow they have to find a way of letting off steam if that steam is not let off naturally in the environment. And what do? What is most accessible to them is technology at their fingertips, okay? So what does technology do for them? It gives them a false sense of connectedness. They numb themselves in technology, whether it's in a game, whether it is whatever it is, in an activity, but the devices are like accessible to them like this. And that's why, again, activities are important to be able to help our children. All this is part of positive parenting. When they go online, they get likes, they get followers, and that gives them a sense of connection. But it's false. Our children are connected on social media, but they're disconnected from what is most important: peers, family, nature, and God. Our children have a lot of pressure to excel. If you ask a child, and that's one of the questions that I ask, especially teens, what is going on? When they are brought to me, they tell me, they talk about what is going on, and the moment I ask them, you feel misunderstood, they break down, because you have touched the right nerve right there. Our children are really feeling misunderstood. And mostly they're being misunderstood because we, the parents, are digital immigrants. We don't know what it's like to be born into this current atmosphere that we're raising our children in. So the pressure to excel, the pressure to be a different way, they really, really feel misunderstood. And I want you to take a moment and think, as an adult, what it's like to be misunderstood. Your intention was this, but people have just misinterpreted your intentions and made their own conclusions. It's the kind of world our children are living constantly. Maybe you can walk out of the job, you can walk out of the relationship, but they are stuck in that whole cycle of being misunderstood, and it's not easy. So again, when we think about calling our children entitled or fragile, let's think about the environment these children are growing up in. We are teaching them about democracy, they are choosing prefect, they're doing elections more than we used to do. And so they're talking about their rights more, which is a good thing. Because again, there's been a lot of harm and abuse done on children, okay? But then we don't know how to moderate that, all right? They're in a place on social media where they see life is hassle-free. But when they don't experience the hassle-freeness because life is hard, they become very frustrated. And so in this environment, we are raising children who are very uptight, and we don't know. But it's showing up in these other things that we call misbehavior, we call being weak, we call being entitled and all that. And so my invitation for us is to step back, do a mindfulness exercise, breathe in and out and ask, what is really going on in my child's environment that I may not be aware of? That's my invitation today. It's a core part of positive parenting. It's a core part of building resilience, understanding the environment of your child beyond what you are just seeing. Because behavior is just 10%. What we don't know is what we need to open ourselves to. And that's usually a longer process. Another study that was done in 2000, that is 24 years ago, before COVID, many years ago. In that study by Jean Twenge, who is a psychologist, she found out that typical children then in 2000, without any diagnosis, when their levels of stress were taken, they had higher levels of stress than psychiatric patients in the 1950s. Okay, can you imagine looking at psychiatric patients with a diagnosis in hospital? They checked their stress levels, compared them with children in 2000, and found that these children, typical every day, And can you imagine what has happened in the last 24 years? We're not even talking COVID. Way before actually technology boom, we call it the fourth industrial revolution. Way before that, way before the internet. So how much more if we took their stress levels now? Okay. But I'm not saying this to scare us. I'm hoping that this information will ground us. That's why I say take pen and notebook and pick what works for you, all right? But this information is important to just lay a foundation for the conversation on resilience, because we need to understand why resilience is such a buzzword. It's because of what's happening in our environment. So nothing I'm telling you is to bring fear, only to be understood. And now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. My invitation is that with this information, it empowers you. It gives you confidence so that you fear less. So having talked about these children, the way we are talking about them, so now what? What do they need? Okay. Now is the time to understand what our children need. Okay. And what do our children need? To help us really ground us, I'm going to share research. One of the things we do at STAWI, we base our information on evidence, on research. We do a lot of just reading up and looking at models and research that has been done, and curate our experiences based on research. And this is one of the research that really guides the work that we do at STAWI. You can check us out at STAWIcamp.com. Please don't go now, just bookmark. Let's stay here, all right? So there's a psychologist that called Amy Warner. Amy Warner and her colleagues did a 40-year study. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to find out about the impact of stressful life events. What were these stressful life events? There was family discord in the family. There was discord in the family. There was family mental illness, and there was history of substance abuse. And so they followed a group of children over a period of 40 years. And they just were watching and asking, wanting to find out, what is this? What is this? What are some of these things? What can we say about the resilience of these children? And later, when they did measures of resilience, several measures of resilience, they found out that 2 out of 3 of these children ended up with behavioral issues, with substance abuse, and with mental health problems. Obviously, I mean, 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Okay, family discord is equal to behavior issues. Family mental illness is equal to substance abuse. History of substance abuse, again, substance abuse. Family mental illness is equal to mental health problems. Like one directly affects the other, okay? So they were like, oh, okay, but not 100%. Remember, 2 out of 3. So if they were following 300 kids, for example, when they turned 40 or 40 plus in their adulthood, 200 of them ended up having issues. But there was a third, 100 of them, okay? They ended up being competent, caring, and confident adults. I hope you can see those 3 C's. I'm the one who answered that question on Menti about resilience, because I think these are really fundamental factors for resilience. And if you think about it, even you as an adult, you would love your children to end up being competent, being caring, and being confident as factors for resilience. And so the study wanted to find out what was special about this 1 out of 3. And they found that they had 2 unmistakable characteristics. Number 1, this 1 out of 3 who turned out to be competent, caring, and confident, they turned out to be resilient, had a strong bond with at least 1 supportive, stable adult. And I'm sure even in Akada, when we're having conversations around prevention, around supporting family, we really talk about these bonds, having a strong bond with at least 1. And I want you to really, really pay attention to the at least 1, so that even as we are here, the 59 of us, whether you're here with your partner, your spouse, or your sister, or the person that you raise your child with, remember that resilient children have 1 stable adult in their lives. And my invitation is for you to commit to be that one stable adult in the life of the children who are in your spaces. Number two, they had a set of learned skills that they learned along the way. And we'll touch a little bit on the skills in this session. For a 1 hour session, it's very hard to cover everything, but I will endeavor to touch a bit on the skills. But today, specifically, I want us to zero in on the one supportive adult. So what this study found out is that creating the perfect conditions is not the answer. It's not about taking them out to Diani or taking them for a movie or even just taking them for swimming. Those are the things we imagine are the ones that help us connect with our children. But really, building resilience is about taking advantage of what is in your environment, what I call the low-lying fruits or the low-hanging fruits. When we are intentional, we are intentional about ordinary interactions with our children, our everyday interactions with our children. When we are intentional about how we are connecting with our children, when we are intentional about our conversations, when we are intentional about building a community around our children, community of like-minded people with similar values, so that they have a voice that they hear, and that voice is consistent in the different spaces, because our children have stable adults in their lives, then we can stop this conversation here. As in, this is all we need. Our low-hanging fruits are here, okay? And so the rest of the session is just really unpacking what this means, to be intentional, to take advantage of ordinary interactions, connections, conversations, and do it in that context of community. So let's not forget community. So the reality is that to build and to cultivate resilience in our children, you have to be a stable adult. And how does a stable adult show up? Number one, a stable adult takes time to understand the environment that the children they're raising in, rather than make judgments and label them as spoiled or fragile or children who have foolishness and all those things that we like to label our children with. We step back and ask, what environment is my child growing up in that could be causing them to show up the way they are showing up? And that is the first part we've already talked about. What is different? Okay, so understanding today's children, we've already covered that. A stable adult understands, takes time to understand. And a stable adult then, because of understanding, then they know what kind of environment they need to create to raise resilient children. Number two, a stable adult commits to the journey of their own self-awareness. Research is consistent. Resilient children have self-aware adults. Can you repeat that with me or write it down? You know, if we were in church, I would say, turn to your neighbor and tell them, resilient children have self-aware adults. Please write it down. Put it in the chat. Resilient children have self-aware adults. All right? Yes, Purity, one stable parent. One stable parent, okay? That is absolutely true. And it takes low-lying fruits to be the one stable parent in a child's life. Jackie, let me read what Jackie says. Our lens of resilience come into play a lot when defining this. So it really depends. Yes, thank you, Jackie, for that. Naomi says, my 10-year-old had a meltdown during the Gen Z protest. His country was coming down, right? Okay, can you imagine? And for them, that's just really scary, you know, and their brains are not even prepared to process that, all right? So yes, resilient children have self-aware adults. Resilient children have self-aware adults. Okay, so what does that mean, all right? Another quote that we like to use in our space is by Dr. Shefali, who has written a book called The Conscious Parent. And she says, unless you are fulfilled, you will use your children to complete you. You will teach them how to live with your unacknowledged fears, rejected emptiness, and forgotten lies, all the while unaware that you are doing so. And for me, the tragedy is the lack of awareness. I don't think we can go about parenting without inflicting our fears and our concerns and our anxieties on our children. It's part of being human. It's part of us wanting to be protected. So I'm not here to say, don't pour your fears on your children, but be aware that that's what you're doing, because that causes you to do some mindful breathing in and out and say, hold up, this is not about me. This is about the child. So my invitation to you is to be aware of the ways you are using your fears, your emptiness, and your lies to complete you through your children. And just to help us start that journey is to just ask you a few questions that can help us, all right? And this is just mindful questions. How do you handle challenging situations? Part of being self-aware is to ask, how do I handle challenging situations? It's a conscious reflection, all right? In your flyer, it says your resilience indicators, just being able to be aware. Am I someone who reacts or responds? All right. Remember, one stable adult, a stable adult opens themselves up to be more responsive than reactive, to step back, okay, and ask, am I able to recognize and name my own emotions? It's part of resilience. I don't know what it is we thought we were coming to learn here, but what you're going to leave here is a lot more tools for self-reflection for yourself to help you continue the journey that I know you've already started. The 59 of us are not here because we don't have information. We are here because the more we learn, the more we need to learn, okay? So if you have, are you able are you comfortable with strong emotions? Are you comfortable with anger, with frustration, with fear, with anxiety, with sadness, with shame, with guilt? It's an invitation. A stable adult is self-aware, and resilient children have self-aware adults, okay? So it's important for us to invite ourselves to be more comfortable with these emotions, or do we tend to numb them with work, with business, with mothering, with fixing? It's just an invitation, okay? To begin to be a lot more aware of how we see emotions, how we view emotions. What's the first thought that comes to mind when you wake up in the morning, okay? My intention today is that this session be as practical for you as possible, so that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you are actually aware of that first thought and how that thought might spiral you into having a certain kind of interaction with your child, or even your spouse, or even your nanny, okay? What is that thought? It's an invitation. And these are low-lying fruits. We can cultivate self-awareness because it's a muscle. What do you really believe about yourself? Really, like deep down. Ukiwekwa kwa kona, what do you believe about yourself? About your mothering, about your fathering, about your parenting, about your space as an employee or a boss or a worker or a business person or a sister or a spouse, okay, or a partner. What do you really believe about those different spaces, about your competence, your capabilities? And when you fail, how do you speak to yourself? An invitation to just say, what is it? What do I tell myself? And you'll be shocked what it is that you tell yourself. And you'll be shocked that that's what you tell your children when they also fail. But more importantly, whose voice do you hear when you perceive you have failed? And that's just, again, an introspection to go back. Is it the voice of a teacher, the voice of an uncle, a mom, a dad, a grandfather, a grandmother? What are those harsh, critical sounds that come to you when you fail? All right. The other thing I would like to invite us to do is to look at our self-awareness in terms of what do we believe about emotions. Because at the core of resilience is our ability to name and manage and regulate and process our emotions. That's the core of resilience, okay? Resilience is an inside-out job. It's not about gritting your teeth or numbing your emotions. Some of us believe emotions are manipulative. And so we don't want to have anything. Don't use your tears to manipulate me. That's what we tell children, or we tell each other. Emotions are acceptable, unacceptable. So you should feel a certain way. Why are you feeling like that? Emotions are attention seeking. Is that what you believe? I know this is not easy for us to process, so I'm just asking you to breathe in and out. Just take a moment. If it's making you uncomfortable, pay attention to the fact that you're uncomfortable with this conversation. Just notice it and be okay without any judgment. And then commit to do something about it. Commit to begin to change the environment. Our children are already having too much negativity in our space. It's time for us to step back and look inward and figure ourselves out and stop talking about how we grew up and how our mothers would never allow us to do this and how tough it was and how we walked 5 kilometers. That is old. They totally don't relate with those stories. I mean, they find them funny. They find them weird, but there are no lessons we are trying to give them by telling them and thumping our chest and saying how much we walked 5 kilometers. You are actually resilient because you walked 5 kilometers, not because you were beaten before you walked those 5 kilometers. You were able to let off steam after something difficult happened because of your environment. And our children don't have that luxury. So it's more work on us. Let's just accept that. Emotions are not a sign of weakness. We need to normalize conversations around emotions. We are uncomfortable with emotions. And so my invitation to you is to begin to ask, what do I really believe about emotions? Which brings us back to, again, that quote. My invitation for you is to let us be aware of what we have believed. Let's be aware of our fears. Let's be aware of any spaces of emptiness we're experiencing. Let's be aware of some of the things we have grown up believing. If you want to raise resilient children, you have to open yourself up to this very uncomfortable journey. Because if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Agnes is asking, how do I manage myself if I am reactive? It's about, again, allowing yourself the journey to have those questions, to answer those questions that I am asking you, okay? And allow it to be a journey. You cannot switch, all right? Acknowledge the reactivity and begin the journey. And actually, to just even support us even more, my book, let me just talk about this a bit. The strongest predictor of a child's well-being is a parent's self-understanding. That just clarifies everything that I have told you about. Resilient children have self-awareness, have self-aware parents. Research says so. Stable, self-aware parents. So I know I've talked, maybe things are coming up for you, maybe some condemnation is coming up for you. I would just like you to release that condemnation if that's what it is. I'm giving you 30 seconds to do that. Just release it and breathe in wisdom, breathe in peace, breathe in forgiveness for yourself, and just make a commitment that you want to be a more responsive parent and less reactive, and open yourself to that lifelong journey. It's a lifelong journey. We don't switch. Okay. So to help you, again, just a quick marketing plug here. My book, Parenting with Your Heart in Mind, is all about the journey of self-awareness. It's to help you go inward, step by step, day by day. Very self-reflective, a lot of exercises that help you to begin to work on yourself, and just gives you, a head start. All right. And we'll give you contacts later for you to be able to reach out to us. Number 3, tool number 1 was understanding the world that our children are living in Tool number 2 is our own conscious self-awareness. Tool number 3 is to just demystify resilience, okay? And so just allow me to go real quick on this one so that we can move on to another very fun part of understanding the brain. But here, we're just saying resilience is not something we are born with or without. It is teachable for us and for our children. So if you don't know it, the same way you enroll for a class in your adulthood is the same way you enroll for a parenting class, is the same way you enroll for whatever. You buy books to open yourself up to learn these things. It's not something you can learn in a course. It's an ongoing process that requires intentionality. We have complicated resilience. We want our children to be tough. We don't want to hear our children complaining. We don't want this kind of negative talk in our house. Those are the things that are actually causing our children to be less resilient. So we need to create space for those things to be talked about, okay? It's not a specific skill, it's a combined set of skills and strengths, and we'll see a little bit how that looks like. And it's not preserved for special trainers, and this is what is important for you as a parent. Any caring, stable, and supportive adult can help build resilience in everyday, inexpensive ways that we are looking at today. And yes, it's more than walking to school or taking a matatu or even doing house chores. Those are not the things that cause us to be resilient. They contribute to it, okay? But at the core of resilience is really a stable adult. It's not the ability to grit your teeth. I think it's just a repetition. It's the ability to use specific skills to work through challenges. Very, very important. It's not about developing a thick skin. It's as a result of consistent nurturing of certain thoughts, mindsets, and behaviors that require intentionality. Again, intentional. Resilient children are not just born, okay? And it's not about suppressing emotions. I think I've talked a little bit about that. Let's allow our children to express themselves. Resilience is the ability to develop self-awareness. Again, the word self-awareness, to enable one to acknowledge, to process the negative emotions that come with certain challenging situations. And then learning to incorporate positive emotions needed to work through this challenging situation. If I was to define resilience for me, it is that, a set of skills where you are able to acknowledge the bad aspect that comes with not getting what you want in life, and at the same time incorporate the positive emotion. So we cannot suppress one. If you suppress negative emotions, you are suppressing positive emotions as well. So resilience is about being open to having those conversations that are uncomfortable. Okay, let me just real quickly see. Picking all the lessons. Okay, all right. Okay, yeah. Resilience, grit, and growth mindset. Okay. Yes, and those are the results that come when we are more self-aware. Because sometimes I've seen, sometimes even when we just use the word grit, we think toughness. Okay, but that's not what it is. There is a lot of, if I may use the word softness, that has to start off for us to even develop that grit. Another tool that I would like to get you to really engage in is understanding emotions. And I can see we don't know how much time we have, about 10 minutes to go. Is that how much time we have, Wendy?
Yes, about 10 minutes.
Okay, let me do a bit of a marathon, okay? So just a little bit to help us understand what emotions are, and you can go and check this. Daniel Siegel has a lot of literature around how to understand how the brain works and how emotions are processed in the brain, and also how to teach children. And so he uses what we call the hand model. So basically the brain, when we think about the brain, this is how it looks like. I hope you can see it. I try to put my palm on the camera like this, and it's like a fist. This is how the brain looks like, but when you open it up, okay, it's like a palm. So mostly the brain is like this, but we're opening up for us to be able to understand that there is what we call the brain stem, which is called the downstairs brain. And this is the part that is most developed at birth. It's responsible for the reactivity, okay? When you see something and you see it as a fight, a threat to you, then you react. And so when you're asking Agnes the question, how do I move from being reactive to being responsive, is to be able to be aware of how you are interpreting, for example, your child's behavior. If you look at it as naturally, you might look at it as a threat to your existence, to their existence, to your reputation, to your reputation, to their future. As long as we are viewing our children's behaviors as threats, we will be reactive. And so, and it actually generates, it's the bottom part of the brain that takes information, and we call it the brain stem. Okay, so stay with me. Let me go to the next part. It's the middle part here. It's still part of the downstairs brain. So the brain has a downstairs and an upstairs. Okay, we have the upstairs and we downstairs. The downstairs has the brain stem. Then we have the limbic brain. Now this is part of the downstairs brain, and this is where emotions are really processed. And it develops around 2 to 3 years. And that's when we see that. That's when tantrums start kicking in. 2 years old don't have tantrums because they're being manipulated. It is because developmentally, it is the season for emotions, okay? They're more active. Emotions are kicking in. They come online at that time, okay? So it also has our memories, past experience, and it's also responsible for our emotions. So that's the downstairs part of the brain. So what you need to understand here is that the brainstem and the limbic area, both of them, which are part of the downstairs brain, work together to create the emotions that drive our behavior. All right? Keep that in mind. All right? As we go to now the upstairs brain, which we call the prefrontal cortex or the upstairs brain, it becomes active around age 5 to 9. And it's responsible for these wonderful things that we want our children to have: logical thought, reasoning, executive functions. And what research tells us, it fully develops at age 25. So what this means is that all the things we normally expect of children, controlling their emotions, making the right decision, being resilient, empathy, and all that, they are dependent on a part of the brain that has just started coming on at age 5 and will continue to develop until they are 25 and even beyond. So for us to be able to really support our children, we need to understand that the things we expect of them in terms of them being tough and not crying and all that, we need to create the environment. And so when we have that basic information about emotions, then it leads us now to this tool number 3 or number 4. It's part of tool number 3, understanding emotions 101, self-awareness and self-regulation. Self-awareness, we've already talked about it, okay? Self-awareness is the conscious and non-judgmental awareness of what is going on with us without blaming it, labeling it as good or bad. So when we know what's going on in the brain, then we are more self-aware, okay? Then we are able to label our emotions without judgment. Remember, everything I'm giving you is for you and your child, but it has to start with you. I said when we numb negative emotions, we numb even the positive ones. Part of self-awareness is to understand that every emotion is important and it is there to tell us something. When we are able to be self-aware, then we can regulate ourselves. What is self-regulation? Is the ability to manage emotions and respond to experiences in the moment in a way that is, remember the word flexible we started with when we were talking about resilience? Flexibility. In a way that is flexible and does not harm ourselves and others. So we cannot regulate what we are not aware of. We can't shut up. We can't be quiet. We can't until we're able to name that emotion. And that's why we have to start with the naming before we are able to. In fact, Dr. Daniel Siegel talks about name it to tame it. So this is a very important tool as the foundation for resilience. Children are able to make better decisions when they have had a chance to work through their emotions. You want them to make better decisions at the upstairs level of the brain. We have to allow room for processing of what is happening at the downstairs level. So why are these two things important? Self-awareness and self-regulation. It's because if we don't name, then we have very limited choices. We don't give room for access to the calm part of the brain. Okay, when we name our feelings, it calms the brain. I think I started with that, and I'm going to end with that. When our brain is calm, it accesses the upstairs brain, and therefore we are able to make responsible, logical decisions. Again, back to the question. Sorry, I keep going back to you, Agnes, because you asked a very fundamental question. How do I become less reactive? Is by actually learning how to be aware of what's going on with you, naming it, because when you name it, it calms you down and you have access to the upstairs brain, which helps you make better decisions for you and your children. When we continually exercise the upstairs brain by naming our emotions, then we are growing the muscle of self-awareness. And during childhood, like we are saying, the upstairs brain is very mature. And so it's your job to facilitate the development. Okay, it's still a muscle. And so creating room for them to explore and experience and express their negative emotion actually helps them move faster towards better decision making. I have said the same thing with different words because, my goodness, this is the most important tool when it comes to building resilience. All right? Creating space for our children to let off steam in ways that are respectful. That's the hard one. But since they don't know how to, then we have to create room for it. Sometimes it may look disrespectful, but it's your job to teach what is respectful and what is not. Then they start to preempt what is coming and they can stop to choose a different response because you're providing an environment for them to learn. But remember, this applies to you first, okay? So when do we teach these things? You have two options, during the moment or when they are calm. Mostly we teach during the moment, the intense moment. That's when we are like, hey, we have to teach a lesson here. But the reality is that they learn the most when you're calm. And so we need to teach at both times, okay? So just allow me to finish up by just putting all this here because these are some of the ways we can teach during the moment, okay? My job really is whatever I have told you up to this point is enough because this information here, you can get it on Google. But at STAWI, we want to create a foundation. We want to help you understand why are we doing all these things. So all these are tools that are available to you. I don't even need to go deep into them, but you can teach them about the brain. You can use any ways to help them decompress with their body, and all that is part of how you can do it. You can play different scenarios. You can point it out when they're doing right. You can help them to explore their feelings, their thoughts, and their beliefs. So during the moment, that is during when we are calm, this is when we teach. This is the 80% of the time. 20% of the time, or even 10% of the time, is how to teach them during the moment when it's happening. The message you need to teach them in that moment, when you're having an intense moment, a moment of pushback, a moment of breakdown, is that all feelings are valid, but not all reactions are acceptable. This is where they need to learn how to do it in a way that is respectful. But before you get there, you have to teach them how that looks like. We don't teach our children what respect looks like. We just expect them to be respectful or kind. All these are lessons, and they are fundamental to building resilience. Okay? Some of the terms you can use is, you seem upset. What do you need to calm down? I'm going to do this like we discussed. So that means you discussed something during the calm times, and then you give the consequence at that time. Your tone, your behavior is respectful, like we discussed, okay? Because we don't discuss how disrespect looks like. We only just point it out when it happens, all right? How will they learn to regulate unless they see it model? When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not to join their chaos. So I just want to end with this to remind us that every life and every childhood is filled with frustrations. We cannot imagine it otherwise, because even the best mother cannot satisfy their children's wishes, or the best father. But the problem is, it's not the suffering caused by frustration that leads to emotional illness or to addictions or to bad behavior or all these things. It's not because of the things they have experienced, but it's more the fact that this child is forbidden by their parents to experience and articulate their suffering. And so if I have to leave you with something that you want to carry, it is, let's create space. Let's create containers for our children to express and experience their suffering, their frustrations, to let off. And for us to be able to do that, we've got to work on ourselves. We've got to focus not on the storm, okay? We like using this analogy here and say, most of the time when we are fighting with our children, we see the shark. But we need to understand that there are needs here that this child has that we need to take time and meet. And the more you meet them during the calm times, the goldfish, there's always a goldfish. So your child is not a shark, he's a goldfish. How do we meet the needs of the goldfish so that we have less of the moments where we see the shark? Because what the shark does, it triggers us into fight and flight mode. So I've said many things. I would just like to summarize your resilience toolkit. Being able to connect, being able to create a space for your child to express themselves, and teaching self-awareness and self-regulation for yourself and for your children. Just as I wind down, just allow me to just say a little bit about our what we do in the next 1 minute, I promise. We do many things, but I would just like to present this, and I will share a link as you ask the questions to just be able, if you would like to access this masterclass, it's a 5 series. It really goes deeper into how to discipline children from a place that is less reactive and more responsive. And we have 5 parts there. And then if you are interested, you can fill out that registration form and get it just an Akada special for 5,000. The regular rate is 8,000. How do we discipline from a conscious, compassionate place? If you would also like to get a copy of our book at a special rate again, you can go ahead and fill out the form that will be shared. I'm going to share the link just now. You can take a screenshot of this if you would like to connect with us more. And then from there, then I'm going to stop sharing. And I would like to invite Wendy back for QA if there is.
Please go back to the other slide, the one that had contacts, kindly.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
awesome.
if it helps, we will share with you. I'll send out an email to all the participants who have attended.
All right.
And also we this is showing on, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So
All
then
right.
you're able, like Dr. Carol said, to ruminate. The stuff that she has dropped on us today is not stuff that we instantly get on board with. We have to come back to it and chew it, like with several stomachs and digest it and practice it. So we thank you so much. You somehow managed to go deep and wide in the space of an hour. So we beg your indulgence as we wind up. Kindly type your questions in the chat. We can take a couple of them. Any that we're not able to deal with today, we promise to email you a response, and we'll respond to everybody. So you can go back to Menti and type it there. You can type in the chat. You can raise your hand. We'll take 2 or 3, and then we'll wind up with sharing a little more information on that. Thank you for the Nakada discount. Please take advantage of it. She has given you a taster of what she does. And she's even shared her links in the chat. All right. I see people already saying thank you. Please don't log out in a hurry. All feelings are valid, yes, Nyambura, but not all reactions are acceptable. All right. Do we have any questions that we would like to ask? You're welcome to type. I don't see anything in the chat. And also on Menti.
Usually I like them to complete this sentence. What I now know is, if there is something you now know. So just complete
Yeah.
that. What I now know is, if you don't have a question.
It's linked to this one about what one thing. With the thing they know, what one thing can we plan to do after learning about resilience today? Because one of the things that is so important is that we take our learning, the proof of learning is in the doing. So how can we move from all these, change something? And you don't have to change everything. Rome wasn't built in a day. Changing one thing, that consistency is what will change the game. Yeah, so I can see somebody in the chat is talking about their one thing. Betty says, what I now know is a resilient child needs a stable, resilient adult. All right.
Don't forget the one stable, I think sometimes we're like, okay, we need many, but we actually
the
just
power
need
of one.
Yeah.
The power of one. And one is doable. One is achievable. One is here. The fact that you attended this means that you are investing in your parenting, and that makes all the difference. I can see Harriet is saying that what I now know is 90% of teaching should happen when they are calm. Yeah, let me tell you, when they get those scripts and then I told Marangapi, really just let them cry and process. Usually the lesson is already ingrained by the injuries that they have received. And us rubbing it in, I told you so, usually does not help the situation. So I'm glad to hear your one thing has to do with teach them when they are calm. And you are calm as well. Alice says, what I now know is all feelings are valid to be the stable, resilient adult. Lensa says, I must intentionally be self-aware parent. Nyambura, oh yeah, you're supporting. It's usually a teachable moment. Huh? Yes. Even when they insist, they don't want to dress a certain way, they want to go out, they twist their ankle. You really don't even need to tell them anything about those shoes again. They will be put in the back of the closet and not worn. Eh? Jillian says, what I now know is the core beliefs about emotions and to name the emotions to help tame the emotions. Yes, that's great. So self-awareness for ourselves before we can even teach our children. All right. Awesome. Thank you. We're winding up, and I would really like for you to respond to this. Many times, we have the webinars and we're always trying to make sure that we're being relevant to the needs and the issues. We are the ones who wear the shoes. Where is it that the shoe pinches? Where is it that you need the greatest support, so that even as we plan our next webinars, we are planning with that in mind. So here are some 5 topics we'd like to do. If you're on Menti, you can even just scroll and move them so that we can see the order you would like. Otherwise, please type in the chat to let us know what's your number 1 and 2. Yeah, number 1 area that you need most support, and number 2 area. We talk about positive discipline, handling emotions, which she started talking about today, but like she mentioned, it's a really deep area. And then there's issues of providing structure, because that's also really key in raising those competent children that we're talking about, and raising actually competent adults. And then addressing sibling rivalry. Those of you who may have more than one, that sometimes it sounds like, and it may look like war. And then also boosting your child's self-esteem and worth, because sometimes the things that we say, really put them down. And even the things we don't say, they shape the esteem and self-worth of our children. And yes, so we have those areas: structure, discipline, emotions, siblings, and issues of self-esteem. So if we can have that, whether it's in the chat or Mentimeter, then we'll be able to craft our next webinar from there. This will actually be in February next year. And as always, we have your email, so we'll send you out the information. It will also be shared on our socials. All right, thank you for that. You still can continue to vote. If you don't remember the number, just say structure, esteem, emotions, discipline, or siblings. If it's not here, also feel free to DM or type in the chat so that we can continue to expand. There's so much. And even on the topics we go through, we don't manage to go in depth. We can always revisit them and continue to build on what we have already done. This is the 4th webinar we have had this year. Thank you for attending. And then here, please scan this QR code so that you can respond to the survey for today. You don't have to do it immediately, but if you scan right now, then it opens. You're more likely to give us your feedback, which is super, super precious, because your feedback tells us what we are doing is adding value and how we can even make your journey in parenting easier. And like Carol said, and I also emphasize, it takes a village. Yeah, when you hear other people share, then you know, kumbe, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who is suffering with this or struggling with this. So let's struggle and improve together. And your feedback helps us to do that. I hope you've been able to scan that. Sorry, I'm moving really fast so that we can wind up because we've gone over time. And then, so you can find us on the socials, NACADA Kenya. We are on X, we are on Insta, TikTok, Facebook, and even Dr. Carol Sio Mchezo, she is on the socials. Follow her for tips. She shares them, she drops them down hot every day on her socials. So you're welcome to do that. I also share that on email so that you're able to be connected with all this parenting, positive parenting information so that we can share with others and grow and improve ourselves. Thank you. Nyambura is saying we are also on LinkedIn, and so is Dr. Carol. On our website, you can go to the Info Hub. There's so much that we have there, including booklets like these for children of different ages, for parents, those of you who want to dig into the research, sign up for training, all of those things are available on our website. So tupatane kwa mtandao. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been wonderful to have you here with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next webinar online and wherever else it is that you can be found. Call us into that space. You can call NACADA, you can call Dr. Carol. All of us are speaking with the same voice, seeking to improve parents. And remember, if you got anything else from Dr. Carol's presentation today, is that it starts with us as parents. Yeah, our children improve when we improve. So thank you for investing in your improvement today. Carol, do you have anything to say as we wind up, as we call it a day?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for engaging and all the feedback. So please follow us, check us out, and be sure to get a copy of our book.
Wonderful. While it's still on discount, yeah, you quote that
yes.
you're tapping into the NACADA discount.
NACADA discount, yes.
And please, you're welcome to watch this again. If you came in somewhere and missed a batch of it, it's already on YouTube. We've been streaming live, and as I end this, it is already available for you. Go back there, share it with others. Sharing, like we teach our children, sharing is caring. All right. So God bless you all and enjoy your journey of parenting. Merry Christmas. Stay safe, stay connected, and just love on yourself and your children and your family this wonderful holiday.